science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction.
Simulacrum salutations to all you cognonauts out there, and welcome to another episode of Exofathom. I am Nick, and I'm joined with my lovely co-hosts, Ayla. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you tonight?
Learning my lesson as to why I don't do cold opens anymore, because I do that almost every time.
It's endearing.
And we have a Mike here. What's going on, man?
A Mike.
Hey, you made it through. You did fine. Don't worry.
Yeah. Just gotta push through.
And like an exosode might just be the proper word we can invent.
Hey, we'll just put it on a t-shirt or something.
Exo cute.
As Bob Ross said, there are no mistakes. There are happy little accidents. So
yeah, as long as you beat the hell out of those brushes.
Yeah, that's right.
I saw on the internet somewhere they were like, what if Gordon Ramsay and Bob Ross traded places?
Oh my god.
It was brilliant because here's some happy little salmonella.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't have to be perfect, except you do.
It's just like a stronger immune system after that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. Sure. And then Gordon Ramsay's like, you call that a fucking cloud? Craft better clouds. No, it's silly.
Yeah. Well, we certainly aren't getting monetized since we broke the cursing barrier within the first 2 minutes of the episode. So
hell yeah.
There we go.
Is that a record?
Yeah, well, I think that's what they do is like for your YouTube and stuff. I think in particular, you're not allowed to curse within the first 10 minutes.
But cursing after the first 10 is good?
Yeah, I don't know why. I think it's the algorithm. The algorithm might just listen for the first 10 minutes to make sure you're not like cussing up a storm. And then,
sorry, man. I fucked up your episode.
Yeah, it's okay.
Wow. Okay. Sorry.
One long string of cuss words.
So sorry. I know. No. So, I'm coming with this knee injury. I have in the back of my head this fear that one of the screws is going to pop out of my knee at any minute. So it's taking all of my brain power to, I think that I'm just cursing more in general. So sorry.
All right. Well, keep your sailor mouth at bay, pun intended, and we shall jump into the rest of it.
Yeah, it might not even be a real mouth, right? Like, who exists?
Nobody
exists. Yeah, sort of. Nobody.
We can't get paid if we're AI, right? I mean, money means nothing.
What if we coded AI and we're just sitting here letting the AI talk to each other? Just chilling.
Great. It's like the ultimate Turing test.
Ooh, I like it.
Just one of us, I guess, would have to be it. Well, no, the audience would be the test subjects.
I'd be disappointed if I were an AI. Just be like, this is the best we can do.
Well, it may not be the best you can do, but it's like just one of version. Many options. Yeah. There's no harm in that. There's an alpha for everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Beta AI.
No, but in this episode, thank you guys so much for tuning in with us this evening or whenever you're listening. We very much appreciate you. In this episode, I wanted to talk about a concept called hyperreality. And this is something that's been kind of swimming in my head for a little while now. And I've been wondering how I could make it into an episode. And I think that we are going to just keep this kind of a casual conversation about the concept. It is a philosophical concept. Philosophical, another made-up word. And it is by Jean Baudrillard. I think it's actually Baudrillard, because it's French, but because I am Southern Californian, anything with a double L is Y and not La. So I call him Jean Baudrillard.
We're Americans. We define what the proper word is. All right.
That's right. So especially those French words.
just out the gate offending.
defending the French. Yeah.
Which, for the record, I am not a fan. I want any accent besides whatever American California accent I have.
You just got to go outside the country. Then it becomes really good to have this accent.
Mm-hmm. It is true. People do like it.
No,
just not us.
Yeah. But it's weird, right? Because if you don't know that you have an accent, right? Like, it's just weird.
It just messes with your head. You sound really boring. But you travel anywhere else, you sound quite different.
You sound exotic. There you go.
Oh, there it is. Well, I remember a video, and it was like, this is what English sounds like to non-English speakers. And it was weird.
That's pretty cool, actually. It's a fun video you can see on YouTube. But yeah. Okay, so let's get into the topic of discussion. And I wanted to start off our conversation with a question to you guys. Ayla, what is your favorite part of Disneyland? It could be anything about Disneyland that
Okay, but Disneyland proper, right? We're not including California Adventure.
It doesn't matter. It's all a part of Disneyland, in my opinion. If it's created by Disney, it's Disneyland.
No. Objection.
Oh, it's starting. Objection.
No, just kidding.
Why?
I'm kidding.
Oh. I'm kidding. Because where is? But I would say I think my favorite part of Disneyland is like around the castle area. Like when you're standing next to the carousel, you can see the castle. And you're surrounded by storybook land with like the Alice in Wonderland ride, the Peter Pan ride. I think that one
those are on different parts of the park.
If it's all in the middle.
Well, the hub is the castle.
Okay, so I guess just the castle. I like that area.
Yeah, I like the castle too. What about you, Mike?
Why?
Well,
I'm trying to think of an answer, so I'm
okay. You're stalling. I'll give you my answer. Sure. My answer for my favorite part of Disneyland is New Orleans Square. I always thought that was the most immersive, and it's probably because something we're kind of touching at in this episode, this very close facsimile to reality. New Orleans Square in Disneyland does look like you're in New Orleans, and it feels that way. There's jazz music playing, it's piped into the air, There's a little bit of like a wharf and water, so it gives you that New Orleans vibe. But yeah, I think that's probably my favorite part of Disneyland.
And the singers, right? Like there's definitely always music in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what?
People playing piano and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I take it back. I think my favorite part is Main Street. When you're walking up and you have all the shops and you have all the smells and all the lights and you can still see the castle. But then, like parades come down there, horses come down. I don't know, like Main Street. And that's the entrance to Disneyland where you're like, I've made it. Through the gate. So actually I rescind my castle because that's not really like a land if you think about it. So I would say Main Street.
It's a pretty long trek to get to Main Street too. Like you got to get out of the world's biggest parking lot, and you have to deal with all the way up to the gates, and then you're finally in. It's like that a moment of relief.
And fun fact, they pipe in the smell of popcorn on Main Street.
They do, and I love them for that. Like, I love popcorn. Love it.
I wonder if Walt Disney's bedroom is still there, like inside the firehouse.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure he's buried there.
Thing.
Yeah.
or cryo frozen right there. But the other thing about Main Street is that Main Street sets the tone for whatever holiday decor they have. So, like if it's Christmas, the big Christmas tree's there. If it's Halloween, all the pumpkins are there. Like it's just a nice little spot. And it's your introduction to the characters also, right? Because they hang out in that area.
It's like the threshold into the fantasy, right? Yeah. So you're leaving the quote unquote real world behind and stepping into this simulation of a world, or as Baudrillard would like to call it, hyperreality. We'll get deeper into the Disneyland hyperreality connection a little bit later, but Mike, you haven't given us your favorite part of Disneyland.
So I'm kind of like stuck in between two rides. So like the lands are cool. If I got to pick a land, then probably Tomorrowland. I think I just like the feel of the weird sounding retro futuristic look of things.
Totally.
You know?
Right. It's the past's vision of the future, which we've passed. So quaint.
Absolute favorite though, I guess number one would have to be the Pirates ride, like the immersion of it. And then number two has to be Indiana Jones, like from the queue all the way up to the ride. Like all of that just feels it's the hyperreality sense. You're even pulled out of Disneyland itself when you're waiting in line at Indiana Jones, and everything just you feel like you're about to go on this jungle-esque adventure.
Absolutely. Actually, I would say that I prefer the line to Indiana Jones over the actual ride. I really do.
The interaction is crazy. You can do so much stuff inside of like that there's so much interaction inside the temple that is I haven't found anywhere else.
You know, it's funny, my grandmother took me to Disneyland the summer that they opened the Indiana Jones ride, and it was sponsored by MasterCard when it came out, and they passed out cheat sheets. There were these hieroglyph cheat sheets that you could translate the hieroglyphs all over the temple with.
Oh, fun.
And so actually all of those hieroglyphs actually have messages that I guess have been long forgotten because the cheat sheets are so old now.
I bet the app has it though.
Maybe the app has a translator for all the hieroglyphs, but I distinctly remember that the first time I went on that ride, they were passing out little cheat sheets so you could read the hieroglyphs.
Oh, I love it.
Pretty rad.
Yeah.
Have you found any of the hidden Mickeys?
I found a few. I know there's one on the line to the Matterhorn. There's a couple that on rides, especially in Pirates. There's a few, but they're hard to find.
I always get caught up trying to justify a hidden Mickey. Like, no, it totally is.
That's what I was about to say. Like, I almost trick myself into like forcing a hidden Mickey where there might not be one. But I swear there's at least one on Pirates.
Right.
It's also, I'm just thinking of us like at a bar, you know, like forcing the hidden Mickey. Is there a hidden Mickey in here? Like it is hyperreality. It's
you think there's any in Club 33 though?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm
like
sure
golden
there's
ones
definitely
encrusted with diamonds.
Right. Right.
The tears of every celebrity beyond time. I mean, my God, do they have to be so like withholding with that? Like, I looked at pictures of Club 33. I was not impressed. It looks like, you know,
it's not that great.
Stuffy. Yeah,
it's just an upstairs little like room that is in New Orleans Square that you have
Please.
filet mignon.
Don't ruin the mystery for me. I don't know what it looks like. I don't need to hear that.
If we talk enough shit about it, they'll have to invite us.
I don't think Disney works that way.
Yeah,
in time, my friend. In time.
Well, we're going to get back to the Disney thing when we talk about examples of hyperreality, but I wanted to sort of initiate the listener into the concept with a metaphor, maybe an allegory that I heard on a talk with a couple of individuals on YouTube talking about hyperreality. So this is not my work. It's not my concept. It's from a commentator on philosophy called Wokel Distance. And he was having a discussion with a couple of other individuals about the concepts of hyperreality. And he used this metaphor. And I thought it was a great illustration as to how to explain it for everyday people. So I am taking this from him. This isn't my own thought process, but I think it's the best sort of explainer for it. So I want you guys to imagine that we are hunter-gatherers in, I don't know, let's say 10,000 years ago. And we are roaming the vast opennesses in the area of your choosing, whatever topography you want to create in your mind. We come across a field. And in this field, we see in the distance red orbs. And so we walk towards these orbs, and we discover that it's a giant patch of strawberries, wild strawberries. We all rejoice as hunter-gatherers in our bounty, and we pick the strawberries. Each of these strawberries is ripe. Some are smaller, some are a bit bigger. We enjoy and revel in the strawberries as we pick them, and we realize that we want to take some with us because we, hunter-gatherers, we want to bring some back to our homes. We come to a consensus that these strawberries are the best when they are large and juicy. And so, say we are immortal and we fast forward to agriculture. We decide that we like these strawberries so much that we're actually going to grow them. We're going to take the seeds from these strawberries and make our own. And through that process of making our own strawberries, we select the best, biggest, reddest, juiciest strawberries to continue the chain of our harvest. So we get to a point where we now have the biggest, juiciest strawberries, similar to the ones that we found in the wild field. But if you remember, the wild field also had small strawberries that were fine, but not ideal. We wanted to optimize, so we decided through our agriculture that we were going to create the best strawberry. Now we can fast forward a little bit further into the more modern age, and we decide that, our strawberries are so good that we really want to start making them into other things. And we say to ourselves, what can we make from these strawberries? Well, we decide that we can reduce the jelly of the strawberry into a syrup. And if we add cane sugar to that syrup, we can create hard candies. Now we've created this business of hard candies in the flavor of the strawberries that we once found when we were hunter-gatherers. Say this strawberry candy business starts to take off and it starts to gain a lot of popularity amongst the people and notoriety. So when we eventually find out that Jolly Ranchers wants to create a Jolly Rancher specific to our strawberry candy. So Jolly Ranchers creates this strawberry candy that is not from strawberry extract, jelly, and cane sugar, but uses high fructose corn syrup and a lot of other chemicals. They're just trying to create the essence of the strawberry candy that we have. Then we can fast forward a little bit further and say that another business wants to create a soda that is Jolly Rancher flavored in our strawberry candy flavor. So now we have a soda that is our candy, but in Jolly Rancher form. We can fast forward even further, and then we realize that Slurpee is now making a Slurpee flavor of the Jolly Rancher soda that is a candy of our candy. And this gains in popularity, and people really love the Slurpee, and you have generations go by, and say you have a kid, and your kid and you are walking through the forest, and you come across those red orbs again, and you realize that it's a strawberry patch. And you take your kid to the strawberries and show them the strawberries and said, when I was younger, I used to find these in the fields. And they pick up the strawberry, and they taste the strawberry. And they turn to you and they say, this tastes just like the Slurpee. That is hyperreality. It is the process of sort of recreation of something that was real into a point where it becomes realer than real. So in this current generation, the people who know of strawberry know of it more likely from the Slurpee that is a mixture of the soda that was a mixture of the Jolly Ranchers that was a mixture of your original candies that was just a mixture of the actual original strawberry that you found. So we're like 6 or 7 layers removed from the actual strawberries. So much removed that when the person who is used to the Slurpee goes back to the strawberry, they prefer the Slurpee because it's realer than real. And so that is the end of my little monologue. Not mine, but from a content creator called Vocal Distance. So I'm not trying to take credit for that, but I thought that was a really good way of explaining the concept and mechanism of hyperreality. So that was long-winded enough. What do you guys think?
Those are some really good engineers. Tell you, make those
Good
flavors.
engineers.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
mean, it almost sounds like problem locality and order of consumption, right? If like your kid ate the strawberry first, was exposed to that original strawberry, and then had the Slurpee, they might connect it in the opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
But due to our
Certainly.
processing, and I guess urban sprawl or just civilization building where they don't have to go out and do the dangerous thing of finding the red orbs, then they come to associate it with whatever they have, and due to that natural environment being all processed foods or processes, that becomes more real than anything else.
Right.
Am I right on with that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's important that you mention the concept of consumerism, because Baudrillard's, the crux of this whole argument from Baudrillard about hyperreality is that it is a byproduct of consumerism. Now, I think we can get into arguments for or against that concept a little later, but in my opinion, I think that it's a little bit reductive to just say that it's a mechanism of consumerism, but it is important that you mention that, because that is the crux of his argument.
Oh, that makes sense. But I've been wondering too, like what is like I've fallen into the bad habit of getting McDonald's multiple times a week.
Right.
And I've gone, and I've gone years, almost decades without eating McDonald's hamburger.
Mm-hmm.
But these McDoubles, these McDoubles are so damn good that I'm sure that that's what like the pure essence of a hamburger is. And I don't know if it's just like the drugs within the burger itself, like whatever chemicals they're pumping through it. Right. But now when I think of a hamburger, I don't think of a thing that I can cook. I think of a McDonald's McDouble.
Right.
For some reason, that's like the perfect essence of a hamburger.
Meanwhile, you could have gone back in time and go to Hamburg when they probably just put cow meat on 2 pieces of bread.
Utter nonsense. It tastes like crap.
Right. But that is the original hamburger.
Bun or my brioche bun. I don't want it.
Oh, you're so fancy down there.
Have you had a pretzel bun with your hamburger?
How are those hikes up there in that ivory tower of hamburger?
I
Right.
was about to be offended, and then you said ivory heights of hamburger.
Yeah.
That's
but
funny.
even the brioche bun or the pretzel bun is a illustration of what hyperreality is, because to you a hamburger is a pretzel bun or a brioche bun, but that was never the intent of the hamburger originally. It was never the reality of the hamburger.
Hyperreality is like awesomer reality, because it just seems to me like those brioche buns, and especially the pretzel bun, it's a vast improvement over.
You're insane. Get out of here. Get out. I'm about to leave the stream. I'm so mad.
Well, and this is oh yes, go ahead.
Can I sorry.
Yeah.
There's in machine learning, you're trying to optimize your algorithm to match a certain model, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the whole point behind it. And it makes me wonder, like, throughout the years, like you have the original hamburger, and then you have this end brioche bun or pretzel hamburger that tastes amazing, right? If this entire time, or even like my taste buds, my cheap plebeian taste buds of McDonald's, if the whole time different hamburgers are optimizing themselves to this point of like perfection to our own individual taste buds, which is the same thing that a optimization function does in a machine learning algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, you're saying that the hamburgers are conscious? And no.
No.
Analogy saying. I was going to say
the hamburger as a metaphor. We're the process of making a hamburger is like a machine learning algorithm that over the course of hundreds of years, we get closer and closer to the optimal flavor of a hamburger, or the optimal thing, essence of a hamburger. And through hyperreality, we can at least approach that asymptotic or infinite behavior. Because somebody can go on living their whole life eating just McDonald's hamburgers, and that's the perfect hamburger. But then they have the pretzel bun or the brioche bun, and they're like, oh my God, what the hell have I been doing eating these McDonald's hamburgers? Those are absolute shite. I need to eat this pretzel bun hamburger.
Right. Yeah.
And then the optimization gets like shifted a bit.
Right. And I think you've touched again on something that, you know, like if we wanted to get into critique of hyperreality, it seems like it's clinging to the past in a lot of ways, because the argument is that there is no real anything anyways, because when you peel back the layers of anything, what you realize is that the illusion is what's real. Like you're saying, you know, it doesn't matter what the hamburger was, it's what the person experiencing the current hamburger right now says it is. And that is in itself an illusion, because it's not the original hamburger.
Yeah. It's a process that's been going on for hundreds of thousands of years, or whatever the time frame is, right? In the strawberry example, it's thousands of years. Reminds me of that Eddie Murphy bit about a homemade hamburger versus the McDonald's hamburger too. But they're both a hamburger at the end of the day, right?
Right.
You might argue it's not because the mom's making it with like Wonder Bread, but that's besides the point. It's still technically a hamburger, I guess. But it's the same thing with the strawberries, right? The strawberries have changed form. Strawberry to Jolly Rancher to Slurpee, but its essence is still strawberry.
Right. Right.
And
even though somebody who never ate a real strawberry in their life would only know the flavor of strawberry through the Slurpee. They still, I mean, do you think that is strawberryness that they're tasting?
Yeah, you would have to introduce them to the fruit of strawberry and then call it something else and then taste it. And they're like, this snozberry just tastes just like a strawberry.
Right.
You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then, then you can define the essence of a strawberry as the flavor of strawberry. Or whatever that thing is.
Right. Ayla, do you have anything that you wanted to?
Bro, I had like 6 things, but you guys are going fast, so I forgot them. Yeah, no, hyperreality. I don't have much to add at this point now, but it might come back.
Still talk about pretzel buns and brioche. No,
honestly, I'm pretty sure 5 of 6 of those ideas were derailments for the convo. So,
well, it's okay if you think about any of this. I'm just going to read into the sort of definitions of hyperreality, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the differentiation between a simulation and a simulacrum. And then we'll go into the stages of the progression of hyperreality, sort of as Baudrillard sees it, in reference to art in particular. And then we can get back into our examples of the hyperreality with Disney and a lot of other stuff that I've noted here. So the definition of hyperreality in semiotics and postmodernism is an inability of consciousness to distinguish reality from a simulation of reality, especially in technologically advanced postmodern societies. Hyperreality is seen as a condition in which what is real and what is fiction are seamlessly blended together so that there is no clear distinction between where one ends and the other begins. The postmodern semiotic concept of hyperreality was contentiously coined by French sociologist Jean Baudrillard in Simulacra and Simulation. Baudrillard's defined hyperreality as the generation of models of a real without origin or reality. So it goes on to say hyperreality is as significant as a paradigm to explain current cultural conditions. Consumerism, because of its reliance on sign exchange value, example, brand X shows that one is fashionable, car Y indicates one's wealth, could be seen as a contributing factor in the creation of hyperreality or the hyperreal condition. Hyperreality tricks consciousness into detaching from any real emotional engagement, instead opting for artificial simulation and endless reproductions of fundamentally empty appearance. Essentially, although Baudrillard himself may balk at this word, the fulfillment or happiness is found through simulation and imitation of a transient simulacrum of reality, rather than any interaction with any real reality. You get all that, Ayla?
Yeah, I don't know why you're singling me out again, but no, it's interesting. Okay, so consumerism. I was thinking about this in your Slurpee strawberry example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the Slurpee tastes like a strawberry. We enjoy the Slurpee. We consume the Slurpee. One could argue that an actual strawberry is going to have nutritional value, right? It nourishes us in this deeper way. But because we're in this habit of going towards the simulacrum, it doesn't quite nourish us, right? And so we keep consuming it, hoping to eventually fill the void of nutrients that we need, but never getting them.
I think you might be on something there. That I think probably Baudrillard would argue something along those lines, especially with the concept of a strawberry, original strawberry, being nutritious, and the continuation of hyperreality furthers away from what was considered real or its origin, to the point where there is really no origin of the strawberry anymore. There is really no reality to the strawberry because it's been re-imitated and bastardized ad infinitum to a point where it means many different things instead of the original thing. And I think through that process, he would say that it becomes less good for us as a society over time. So like you said, the strawberry having actual nutrients to the Slurpee, which is actually detrimental for your health.
But suppose you were able to inject all of the nutrients of a strawberry into that Slurpee, then are we touching back to reality, or is there still some ad infinitum fallacy happening?
Like the blob of meat that we're trying to create in the lab? Is that what we're kind of talking about?
Well, we're also assuming that the strawberry is what we know as a strawberry and not something else. I'm trying to unground reality and push it towards simulation theory. So I'm trying to think of like, if we just decided that these red orbs are strawberries, then we may not even, it could be blobs of meat hanging off of vines.
Right.
But I don't think I'm trying to work somewhere in that direction.
Well, and Baudrillard would argue that behind every simulation is the reality that only the illusion exists. So if you wanted to peel back the reality of the original strawberry, you would find out that that's actually not, like you can't be sure that that's strawberry at all anyway. So therefore, there is no real. It's all just layer cake of illusions that we understand strawberryness to be.
Do you think that's just like a human thing, or do you think like
yes, absolutely? And I think you just touched on the most basic criticism for this, is that I think that where Baudrillard would concern himself with the concept of consumerism as an accelerant, or maybe even the origin of hyperreality, I think that it's much deeper. It's more psychological.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was thinking about these pears today. So I got a gift of these royal, they're like awesome pears. They're really delicious, but they're expensive. They're of high value. And, I was reading the little card inside, and they're like from French, like they originate from France in like the 1700s. 1800s, they moved to another place. Now they're in Oregon and they're being grown. There's a long legacy of them being like one of the best pears in the world. And it just is funny to me because as Mike was talking, if we could use pears or we could use strawberries, the source and information used to code all of the simulacrums. If you know, like, let's say I go to a forest, there's 10 different types of strawberries. I pick one, gross. I pick another, gross. I pick a third one, yummy. I'm like, great. And so I take the yummy one, I give it to my friend Bob, and I'm like, Bob, code candy to taste like this. Bob needs more strawberries. So he goes to the forest. He doesn't grab the first 2 shitty strawberries because they're gross. He grabs the 4th one next instead of the 3rd one, and that also tastes delicious. So he grabs that one. Then his strawberry is going to be different than my strawberry, and in his coding, it's already flawed from its coding. So I don't know. I guess I just bring that up because it's like with these hyperrealities and different iterations, there's so much room for error and things to get lost. And this is reminding me of that episode you did about that ship, where they kept taking, the ship of Theseus, and they kept taking pieces away, and now every single piece has been removed and replaced. Is it still the same ship? You know.
Yeah, it's a very, very close, sort of analog to what we're talking about here, for sure. We're talking about, I mean, ultimately it comes down to authenticity, right? And, and I think that in Baudrillard's sort of sense, I think it was a lamentation, kind of a la God is Dead, in which he basically said, like, the wheels of this have already fallen off. We're already throwing ourselves deeper into the hyperreality, and this is going to make everything meaningless. I think even famously, Jean Baudrillard, to show you what a decent guy this guy is, wrote a paper about how the Iraq War never happened. And that, and this is when he was so far up his own butt that he couldn't see the light anymore.
Wait, which Iraq war are we talking about?
The original Gulf War. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because Baudrillard died in 91, I believe.
He just thought it wasn't real?
Actually, no, 2007. Sorry, 2007. So his argument for it was that the only way that people in, outside of the war zone, out on, not actually on the ground, knew that there was a war going on was through simulation through television, simulation through, reporting. Even the people who flew drones back then never really saw people. They saw a simulation of buildings and, like really crude graphics from the drones and all that stuff. So his analysis of this is that since that most of the world never experienced actual war in Iraq, that it just didn't exist.
Yeah, that falls on the same psychological trap as the moon landings, right?
Right.
Like we didn't. I have never landed on the moon. I don't know if we actually ever did. I only experienced it through the simulation of television or through web streams, So therefore, it's never happened. That's it's a juicy fallacy, but it's one I think should be avoided. I think what becomes interesting though is like if you relax the idea of consumerism, right, to just basic visual or to basic input senses, right? I see a red orb, I construe that it's a strawberry or something like that. Then is all of reality just simulation? Or I guess simulacra through the medium of the eyes, if it has to identify, because your eyes will flip the image upside down. The images that go into your V1 and V2, which crosses your brain, then it hits something else that does some sort of pattern matching, and then your brain identifies it as a strawberry. So through that whole process, if something goes wrong, or since things are changing, you're not actually taking the raw input in. So then you can argue that all of reality is just one big simulacra.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And this is where kind of I separate from the deconstructionalism, because I think that when you get this heady about things, whether I don't know, I mean, whether Baudrillard is correct about his assumptions or not, I think that that's not even actually the point. I think you've gone so far past the scope that you're starting to dismantle everything, because at the end of all of this is just basically nihilism. There's nothing that exists. Nothing is real. There's no reality. You can't know about anything about it. And that's kind of where Baudrillard ended up too. He was an avowed Marxist for quite some time until he kind of started this postmodern philosophy and got deep into this, like, simulacrum and simulation thing, and he just realized that none of it actually exists and it doesn't matter, and he's just kind of abandoned his philosophies.
I find it really interesting that nihilism ends up being the midpoint. I think it's the midpoint where everybody arrives, or thinkers arrive to, where no matter what path they take down, whatever branches of philosophy they want to go down, most of them end up at this point where they're like, oh my God, nothing exists.
Right.
So then where do you go from there?
And you got to climb out of hell. They just make the descent into hell, and then they're like, okay, this is life now. And it's like, no, you took half the story. You have to climb out of hell now.
And it's not like, I don't want to pose the cipher answer, right? Like I don't want to pose like, I know the steak doesn't exist. I know it's just a product of the matrix, but like, goddamn, isn't it great, or whatever he says. He wants to jump back in. I'm not posing that answer, but it's just like, you do have to, you're right, you do have to climb out of hell, but that doesn't mean giving everything up with it. Like, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. And I think you ultimately get to the point of like, what is the utility of this? Like, it is a fun exercise to think about. And a lot of, I think, postmodernism is a fun exercise in the way that it does stimulate your brain to think creatively and to try to like really bend some of these ideas. But at some point you have to put the ideas down, you
need like it. Regardless if nothing, like my favorite part of nihilism, or where I ran with it, is that if nothing matters, then everything matters. And then you get to decide what degree you want to go to do the things you want to do. Like if you just want to lay in bed all day and not get out, then be the best depressed person in the world and just lay in bed all day.
Right.
But you'll find that there's some biological mechanism that will make you get up out of bed and do something.
Usually pee.
Yeah, right.
Do you ever think about
Sorry. Yes, Ayla.
Do you ever think about how dogs sleep for most of the day, and yet we never dare to call a dog depressed?
Yeah, most animals sleep for most of the day, to be honest.
Yeah, because we say it's their nature. Yeah.
And we're above dogs, right? So we shouldn't sleep all day. We're above these animals. We are an animal. I had a great psychology teacher who always told me, like, you need to spend more time in your parasympathetic nervous system. You need to spend more time resting, sleeping, just enjoying existence. Because that's what dogs do. They're so happy when they're sleeping, like kind of kicking their leg and dreaming or doing whatever. But for some reason, we as humans look down on that.
Not me. If I can get a good sleep, like I have allergies, and so every now and then I have to take the big pills, and those will knock me out. And I have to really be strategic about it, because if I'm trying to be working early the next day, I've got to take that pill at 8 and fall asleep at 9, because I will sleep until 9. Like I will sleep for 12 hours, and and it's like a deep sleep. Like it's not like I'm waking up and being lazy. It's like close my eyes, die for 12 hours, and then wake up. And when I do wake up from those long sleeps, I feel incredible. I just feel like a whole new person. And I don't think that we've figured out sleep as much as we think we did. But also too, just to what you were saying, Mike, about being the best whatever you are, to me that still seems like there's some mold that you vision that could also be flawed. You know what I mean? So it's you can keep deconstructing this, and then you find a way out of hell, and then there's a chink in your armor and you're like, oh no, and then you go back into hell and you're just like, it's just a cycle of believing and disbelieving. And it's funny because I think that's also just a hardwired function of our brain. You know, Nick always talks, or Mike, you always talk about like the negativity bias. You know, our brains are always scanning for like threat, danger, and trying to predict. And I think that's kind of an interesting human thing. You know, we're always trying to predict stuff.
No, but it seems that the only constant that we have is that good old void, that good old nothingness. You can build up all that armor you want. You can sit, you can do whatever you want, right? And you can carry that to an extreme degree. But eventually you, like you're right, you're like you're saying, you find the flaw in it and then you return back to nothing and then you build up again. And that's sort of that's all of life, I feel like sort of just how it builds up, destroys itself, builds up. Like if you're lucky, then you have other people around you to kind of build a shared hyperreality. And so then you don't have to fall all the way down to nothingness, but there's some sort of social structure that will catch you and then you can build up from that point. But when you do that, you're assuming that that social structure that you built either has no flaws or that you're okay with the inherent flaws within that. But at least it keeps you out of nothingness if you are if you want to avoid going to that sort of depth.
Or maybe it's just strength in numbers, you know, that we have this sense in us that once we've amassed a certain number of people that are invested in a collective fate, we can kind of breathe easier because somehow there's like a weird feedback system going on. Like, well, if you're okay with it and you're okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, like some shared Sisyphean concept that it's just not one person pushing the boulder up the hill, it's multiple people pushing the boulder up the hill.
Yeah, and chit-chatting up the hill and like, you know, massaging each other's feet at the bottom of the hill, taking turns on the hill. I mean, you know, cooking burgers on the hot side of the rock on the hill. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could be like doing CrossFit on the hill. You could make it a really nice time there, even though you're in this hell. So like you have some other people, it's like a party. Which is weird also because we don't ever, well, I was just going to say, and it's weird too, because we never really know that those people are really people, you know, like.
No, you only see like one.
Other minds.
Yeah, you only see one dimension too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of that person.
Yeah. Well, and I think that even now with the pandemic and sort of everybody's lives being more forced into the online space, we could call that a sort of hyper reality of sorts too.
Can I just go on a soapbox here? Okay, Facebook wants to own the meta space. Do not go silently into that night. I don't. If anybody's going to own some sort of meta space, it can't be Facebook. Just don't do it. Don't invest. Don't add it.
I want to see who starts to hack the metaverse, because that's going to happen. You just can't start building up this sort of technology without people finding fun ways to break it, whether it be in the metaverse
creating
itself.
A super fun Zion.
What?
Yeah, there's that. Just the rejection of the metaverse altogether. And then a bunch of people get off of social media and be like, we're just going to do this old school thing called towns. And then we'll go from there.
No. Now people are building towns in their like game apps. I don't know. There's like, was it Farm Crossing or something? I don't know. I just...
Don't ask
me.
Nick.
I mean, this whole hyperreality stuff. I mean, you think about it. Like, you think, like exactly, Mike. Town. There's actually on Facebook. I just got invited to join Facebook neighborhoods. Oh, for why? The person next door to me. Do I really need them to be in this little online group chat? For fuck's sake. No.
But that's what I mean. That's what I mean about this sort of like the creep. And I think Baudrillard isn't wrong. I just think that he's looking at the world through a very finite lens and looking at the phenomenon of hyperreality as this thing that is destroying our civilization. Whereas I just think that it's kind of a progression of mankind, like we were talking about, Mike had mentioned this sort of, you want the continuation of improving. It's like it's written into the code of reality, into biology. If nothing wasn't geared towards progress, then none of this would exist in the first place. And so, like it's almost inevitable that when you have a thing, new things are branched off and imitated from that thing. And then that becomes, sometimes those imitations become the definition of the original thing,
Yeah, like a sort of an evolution-based theory of hyperreality.
Yeah. And
I'll
I think
look at my
honestly
neighbor and be like, "That's my Facebook neighbor."
Well, look at
Not even my neighbor anymore.
Well, look at like, say you have kids, right? And those kids grow up in a metaverse environment or a Second Life environment. I'm an old school gamer, so I remember all this stuff long ago when Second Life came out, which is basically the same thing. But those kids might end up just being like, oh yeah, they're my neighbor without ever meeting them in real life. Like Facebook neighborhoods get tied into metaverse. You have meta hoods, neighbor meta, I don't know. But they meet them there. Meta gangs, yeah, that's gonna happen. Probably a far safer way to have gang warfare than anyways. But then those kids end up
storage? Oh, so I was gonna say, do you think because of data storage we'll have like data trash collectors in our meta towns?
Oh my god, yeah, you just forget an idea because you threw it in the trash or something like that.
Yeah, or like, they're gonna charge us for cloud storage up the ass. I mean, think about how much data you're gonna accumulate over the amalgam of your lifehood, right? So to reduce funding, your meta neighborhood has little HOA fees or whatever, and then you have somebody that comes in and they scrub your least seen files or your oldest files for you. So you don't have to, and you don't get an extra fee.
There's going to be, instead of that, there are going to be meta repo men that come in and take all of your legendary items of the metaverse or whatever.
Oh no, you said legendary items and I went to Red Dead Redemption and I was like, no, not my legendary horse.
Yeah, it's going to be the thing. And then like, but yeah, no, like those kids are going to grow up in a world where they never actually meet their neighbors until far along. And if you grow up, I grew up in the gaming environment. So in high school, I had really good friends. I played competitive Counter-Strike. So from like 3 p.m. or 3:30 p.m. to midnight, I was around the same people, the same voices. We became really close. But if I walked past them on the street, I wouldn't know. And this is what you're going to see through the progression of hyperreality. And I don't know if by cutting off social senses like this, if like it's because you can, so in going back to machine learning, you can over optimize your function. You can make everything work perfectly for your training data. But when you end up taking real data in from the wild, everything goes astray. Everything gets effed up. So I wonder if our version of hyperreality now that we're building towards might be an over-optimization of what we are building naturally. And because you won't recognize your neighbor, the kid won't recognize the neighbor, they won't actually end up, they end up in a completely empty world that feels full, but is not really full, like you see now with dating apps.
Hence the simulation, right? And then you really are into the full hyper reality, like where behind everything is literally just illusion.
Yeah, like you can take this really far. Like you could take this all the way to the point of picking romantic partners, or it's like two people fall in love with their metaverse characters, but actually don't like each other at all in real life.
Right.
Or have no attraction.
Yeah. That was a Black Mirror episode, right? The two guys fall in love with each other on the metaverse. Seriously, that was literally a Black Mirror episode. It was their last season. They stopped making Black Mirror, by the way, because the creator was like, it's getting too close to reality.
They're catching up to us. We can't. No, like that sort of thing.
2020 was Black Mirror.
Right.
They were
we've just started. Like it's the tip of the iceberg. But like, this has happened in gaming before too. It's happened a lot in gaming, and online game space. But yeah, no, you're gonna get to this point where it's gonna get really strange because even with like hapvac suits, all of like the tactile responses you're gonna get, it's going to feel really real, but it's still going to be at the end of the day empty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, illusory.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And and that's something that I think we shouldn't be incredibly happy about. I think that I don't think that I'm 100% about Baudrillard's, prescription that it's purely consumerism. I think that it's just an inevitability. It seems like it's hardwired. Like we were created by an AI to create AI, or some sort of digital human hybrid,
Sure, but once you've seen the iceberg, if you're far enough away from it, you can divert course. Right.
Yeah, you definitely can, but it seems like everybody who is in charge of the Titanic are going full steam ahead into the iceberg.
Yeah,
like
well,
everybody everybody on the deck is like, hey, you guys, do you see that? And the people at the helm are just like, keep going, give her all she's got, go to it.
I don't know how to tell you this, my friend, but humans are a little dumb. Just a little dumb.
Yeah, I know. It is very true. But yeah, I mean, so go ahead, Ayla. Sorry.
Why
There's a
don't you
little
finish
bit
your
of a
thought? 'Cause
lag.
I might go. Yeah, I kind of figured. I'll go. You say your thing because I'm gonna take it into a different question, and I don't want to.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I wasn't going to say anything important. Don't worry.
Oh, that's sad. Okay, so I was
Jesus
thinking
Christ.
I took his sentence for like that deep wound. Like, wasn't gonna say anything important. Like, it was an Eeyore statement. Okay, anyway. Consumerism. Okay, so I was just thinking about this earlier. So to consume something, that's simply to eat, drink, ingest it, to buy services or use a resource. And so in consumerism, it's this preoccupation of society with the acquisition of consumer goods, right? Like that's how it's defined.
Mhm.
And I just wonder to myself, like in the natural world, what are the mechanisms at play that keep most animals from overeating or like locusts? They'll destroy entire crops, move on to the next one. They never stop. But for most of the animal kingdom, there are going to be mechanisms in place to start to like, I don't know, like constrain that, curb the consuming, the consumption. Yeah. And, and it's one of those things too, where like, I think consumerism as like this mentality, I feel like it's a symptom of something else. Because intrinsically to consume is the natural thing, but these mechanisms that we're ignoring, which might be something that's not getting turned on because the things we're consuming aren't as satisfying, like.
Yeah. We don't criticize a black hole for eating matter and taking up matter all around it. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's like, shame on you, black hole. You shouldn't be consuming so much of those stars. Come on now.
That'd be great, though. You see like this black hole traveling through the middle of a Game of Thrones scene. It's like, shame. Shut.
Black hole shaming. Yeah. But even the universe has stops for that. A black hole can only consume so much, and then the matter around it is too far away for it to pull. So
but when you venture into psychological realms, right? Because even with the definition you gave, Ayla, of consumerism, I could start to play with that word ingest a lot to mean a bunch of different things. So psychologically speaking, we may just end up being locust types. And, pointing back to the technology, it seems like we can't ever satiate the appetite of our mind.
Yeah, I don't even think it's psychological. I really think that it's a hard-boiled reality. It's baked into the cake of reality. Like all I can see is
humans.
Not just humans, everything is about the acquisition of energy. It's
But
all
like an
anything cares about.
animal, like pandas only eat bamboo. A panda's not like, hey, look at that mushroom. Let me try to eat it. Oh, look at that rock. Let me try to eat that. Ooh, a stick. Let me eat
Yeah.
that. No. But humans, for some reason, we're like, ooh, what can we eat? This thing,
Well, panda's
that
a bad
thing, and
example
we
because
never stop.
pandas are a bad example because they were created by the Chinese in a lab. They're not real animals.
Oh my God.
But hold on. So bears, hummingbirds, there's a bunch of things that fall into hibernation when they need to, right? Like hummingbirds, they have to eat all the time. In fact, their metabolism goes so fast that they starve to death when they sleep sometimes. So they
Damn.
fall into a state that ends up being basically similar to hibernation. So the question becomes, if humans have that mechanism for this sort of for hyperreality, or can we evolve to build that mechanism for hyperreality where we can say, all right, enough's enough. I need to get back to just base reality if that's the real world.
Yeah.
But I think I see your point though, Nick, where it's like even reality might be a form of hyperreality, so we will never evolve out of it.
I think it is. It's just one of those baked into the cake things where if we were able to look at the computer coding of reality itself, it would probably have this mechanism in the code: expansion, consumption of energy.
Yeah, but there's
Like that is
still
a law of nature.
yeah, but as Ayla was saying, there's eventually a halting. There's even in
Sure.
computing in Turing machines, you have the halting problem. The halting, like
And
when does your machine stop working?
And it's usually the end of resources. That's
Yeah,
usually
like
the halting.
but or a resource that we have that we don't know what to do with.
Perfect. There we go. And I think that we can jump into sort of what we're talking about right now, which is this like the stoppage mechanism. And I heard this in the conversation that I was listening to about hyper reality and stuff. So this isn't my original idea. But one of the guys was talking about authenticity being, if not a stopper, but at least a slower to this process. And that authenticity, there seems to be a crisis with authenticity right now. And that if we were to value authenticity more, then perhaps we might be able to slow the process. Maybe not eliminate the process, but at least put the brakes on enough for us to get our bearings.
Why authenticity? What makes that special?
That's a great question. I think authenticity is it is the thing in which is missing in the hyper reality equation that Baudrillard would argue makes society miserable. It's this: you're removing yourself from the thing, so much so that society becomes this sort of diseased thing that isn't worth living off of anything real anymore. So
Okay.
the concept of authenticity might be a salve. I won't say that it's the antidote, but it could be a salve for the sort of malignant spread of hyperrealism.
Okay, so suppose I how do I want to construct this? That makes so conspose. Jesus Christ. So suppose I want as my brain's broken. Now I'm thinking
okay.
like 10 things.
No
So
worries.
assume that I want to
There we
be
go.
an Instagram model.
Mhm.
And I take pictures of myself, and all I do all day is work on my image, right? And I can
Mhm.
only naturally get my image to a certain point.
Right.
But I find that if I can apply this filter, then I look so much better.
Yep.
So then I start there. So then I've
Mhm.
entered the hyperreal and kind of left my authentic self behind. But
Yep.
then I realized that if I add 2 more filters, and if I change my diet like this, or if my base picture looks like something different, but not
Mhm.
really authentic to my lifestyle, now I have to do something self-harming or self-damaging, right? But with the mixture of the real life or the authentic and the inauthentic, and the inauthentic, I get closer and closer to the inauthentic and closer to hyper reality, and that makes me sick.
Yeah, I think that, well, Baudrillard would argue that the detachment from reality itself is the real reason why existence has become less and less sort of meaningful for
So the
people.
second that you apply that filter, you put all of your meaning into that Instagram sort of world.
Yeah, you're acquiescing to the standard of the Instagram, structure instead of being your authentic self. You're sort of lying to yourself about the reality of you-ness, what you are.
I got you. And then if you are authentic and kind of curb that appetite a bit, you can begin to slow down this downward spiral through the
Right.
Instagram thing.
Yeah, you
Right.
wouldn't put the filter on. Maybe you wouldn't have the need to put the two filters on, or show your awesome car, or show that you're on a trip to, Abu Dhabi or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of that sort of like inflating the self into this digital self, the avatar, if you will. And the avatar is this sort of hyper reality of who we are. So, and it's become more and more far removed, right? So like you're saying, with the addition of filters, then you can, pose in certain ways. You can have lighting in a certain way. You can make sure that you're standing next to a really nice car. Even if that car isn't yours, the picture will assume to the viewer that it's yours. Like, so you get deeper and deeper into that thing. And really the only way to sort of stop that is to say, hey, I'm not rich. I don't own a Lamborghini. So maybe I won't post a picture next to a Lamborghini unless I say, hey, I saw this cool Lamborghini on the street, like,
I think the egoist would have some words to have with you, but from a Jungian point of view, I think you're right. Like you're starting to remove yourself farther than the self, and you're like a Jungian lens. You want to find yourself. You want to build that bridge back to who you really are, whatever that means, and only through authenticity. And can you do that? Whereas though, like the ego is, it's like none of that matters. Just keep feeding that ego. But I think that's a hollow world, man. I think that's more damaging than good at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it becomes an existential crisis, right? So I agree with Baudrillard in that sense, where it's like, unless you can stave off the ill effects of hyperreality, with small doses. I mean, we're all capable of certain levels of authenticity in our lives, some more so than others, but even small doses, I believe, can kind of hopefully break that spell for a little while,
Yeah, because if you keep going down that hole, you get to the point, like Ayla was talking about, those locusts, where you have to feed more resources. Like you have to afford to be able to rent that Lamborghini to take those pictures.
Right.
And guess what? Unless you want to say you've upgraded your Lamborghini, you have to keep continuity. So you have to keep paying money to get that Lamborghini to take a picture in front of it.
Yeah.
So then
and it's not enough to just take one picture. You have to take a picture every day, like.
Yeah, and then you become the slave to the hyper real.
Right.
What I think is interesting is that, we talked about this last week, I think, about necessity being the mother of invention or something like that. And so as you guys are talking, I had this chicken and the egg thought going on, right? Is that like people are often only doing those things because those things carry value in our society that help one increase one's value to receive goods and services.
Right.
Love and attention, and it is interesting because I mean, I think the authentic self is probably the solution, because if you're posting pictures of Lamborghinis and you're paying to rent a Lamborghini, you're going to attract other people, maybe collaborators, who are like renting out jet planes for 10 minutes to take a picture inside of it, Like attracts like. And I just wonder, from like a larger hyperreality perspective, what that throws into the cake. You know what I mean? Like this idea that like
it may accelerate everything. Like it may accelerate the hyperreality where it becomes it becomes the black hole that the authentic people are like, shame, or I guess the inauthentic people are running towards it and just get sucked in, and maybe the authentic people are like yelling at the top of their lungs, shame, we need to stop, but they're not far enough back. They may interact with the black hole known as Instagram, right? And thereby being sucked in no matter what.
Yeah.
So the only the illusion choice, the only option you really have is to never step into the hyper real world at all, or
send a proxy.
Yeah.
I've been seeing some news about Instagram accounts that have like millions of followers, and they're a robot or AI generated, images. They're not real. And the fact that those non-real entities have somehow figured out the algorithms, post a frequent number of times, use asymmetrical everything, or no, I guess symmetrical everything, right? So beautiful everything. Then that's enough for most people to fall in line and hit that follow button, to be engaged somehow, even if it's not even advertised that that thing isn't real. And then you have brands paying for that thing to represent the brand. And it's just weird. And that's a thing that happened.
Yeah, interestingly enough, getting closer to like just general entertainment industries or something like this that happened with MF Doom. MF Doom is a rapper who built this whole persona around Dr. Doom, right? And every time he had a concert, sometimes he would show up, sometimes he would send somebody else in a Dr. Doom mask as a Doom bot. Doom bots are also in Marvel comics there was something that Dr. Doom built that looked like him that would go and attack the Fantastic Four. But like, yeah, you send this proxy into this hole of, I guess consumerism might be the easiest example of it. Maybe that's why Baudrillard used it. Like he didn't deduce the fact that it's a hard-boiled reality thing. I think it might be human constrained though, because you have some pathological things like locusts, because locusts only feed to feed, as Ayla was saying, which is what we're talking about, right? You only feed the status to build more status. But yeah, no, MF Doom, you have this guy who was able to push something into the black hole, get metrics back, and escape it altogether when it came to the trappings or the hyper reality of fame and fortune.
Yeah, and maybe he was being his authentic self when he didn't show up to the show, and he was like, "Man, I don't feel it today. I'm going to send my other guy because I'm not going to be producing my best show if I don't feel it. So fuck it."
By the way, rest in peace, Doom.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think you're right though.
Yeah, and I think like this is a good thing to ponder, because we are hurtling ever farther into the black hole, and we do need to pump the brakes a little bit. Like, I'm not a Luddite, and I'm not going to say that like we need to get rid of everything that is some sort of like simulation. I mean, like one of my critiques about this idea is like, so what do we do? Go back to living in caves? Like, I think that we're too far gone down the road to even sometimes lament this reality.
It's time to burn down the Tower of Babylon. Let's do it. Just destroy everything. We're going back.
Yeah. Right.
No, we do need to pump the brakes a bit. The phenomenon of influencers is intriguing, because I think in the most optimistic sense that in a couple hundred years from now, what it will end up breathing in is a breath of air into philosophy, where you have influencers who are not swayed it by brands, because we hit some sort of economic collapse or something like that, where brands can't really push resources to people to do stuff, so they have to find other ways, and those people end up dying out, and the people that come up are thinkers who people in desperate situations.
You mean the change makers?
No change makers.
Look, I have no problem with somebody being an authentic change maker, but if you're wearing a thong and holding up the peace sign, duck lips, and then you have like a bottle of some vegan thing and you're like, I'm saving the world, like no,
you're just posting naked online, like
well, that's the thing. You can't use change maker to be like, oh look, I can post all this self-aggrandizing bullshit
put
now.
they used to put pinup models with next to boxes of cigarettes back in the 50s and 60s. They're no different. There's no difference there. You're just
Yeah, but they
peddling something with
also,
sex. That's
but
all.
the
That is a
thing
good
is too,
question,
they
though. If I wanted to
also
take up a cause,
go
sorry,
for
I'm
it.
lagging.
No,
Well, I was
go
just
for it.
gonna say, oh God, this lag. Oh, it's horrible. It was, never mind. The joke's gone now. I'm sorry. Go, Mike.
Uh,
Oh, I was trying to tell you to step on the gas because you were like, you're going straight for it. You should just. I'm sorry, it was my fault.
No.
But they put pinup models also in bomber planes and places where people would have died to kind of keep them going and inspire them. So like, sex might be a component, and it shouldn't be the rolling component. That's where things get pathological, but it still has its good utility.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't dismiss that at all. Yes, Ayla. What?
I was gonna say, it'd be a cool experiment to have a person be really jerkish online, but then in their authentic real world, like do a lot of good and help people, and to see at the end of their days what they're remembered for.
You're talking about gamers? Those are gamers.
Maybe. No, I think it'd be interesting to have like an infamous influencer and someone really vilified, but then in their like real life, they're nothing like that persona. And then when that person in 100 years dies or whatever, if we still die in the future, then like, what would that mean for the definition of that person, right? Is their hyperreality the real them, or is the human person the real them? Or are the real life implications of their hyperreality self the basis upon which to judge them or not? I mean, not to be judging people, but I guess defining them.
I have an example for you if you want one.
Sure. I mean, this might be an uncomfortable one if it's a real world example, but sure.
So, wow. This is before the age of the internet, but an influencer nonetheless. Have you ever heard of Sonny Liston?
Mm-mm.
He's a boxer, probably one of the toughest fighters ever, world renowned. But he grew up extremely poor, and throughout the youth of his age was a criminal because he had no choice. He stopped going to school at like 6th grade, but found that he was so tall, and also had his childhood household was very abusive. He leaves his childhood household in the middle of pum dunk nowhere into inner city. I think it was St. Louis, Chicago. They're very far apart, but something like that. But he finds out that his size can get him money, and since he's all on his own, he needs money more than education, so he becomes a criminal and starts knocking heads in for the mob. Mob bosses find out that this guy's a pretty good fighter and tries to get him into boxing, so he gets into boxing and then ends up becoming the world champion. And all he wanted was a clean slate. All he wanted was to start life over again, to kind of remove himself from his past. Basically, a man doing what he had to do. But when he won the world championship, he was vilified and hated and harassed by the cops everywhere. He was also somebody that I believe either beat the holy hell out of a cop in his younger years or killed them, or one of the two.
Ah.
So he was hated by the cops everywhere. And so here's somebody who was very vilified, wanted a clean slate, and by the people that knew everything about him, he was a really kind soul. But if he got on his bad side, then that was it. And he just had a naturally intimidating looking face and persona, and that was just due to the trauma experience as a child, which makes sense. But he gets a little bit older in life and he can no longer box. He loses the title, he leaves. And still he is portrayed as a villain. So he sort of throws up his arms and says, screw it, I'm a villain. He starts getting back into his old life and ends up dying mysteriously one night. I think they say it was of an overdose or something like that, but they believe that the mafia gave him a hot shot. And
It's a hot
it's a completely pure dose of heroin. So usually when you inject heroin, it's not pure. It's cut with something because a pure dose will kill you.
Were they? Oh,
And
so they're like intentionally. That's how they off somebody.
yeah, so like they'll hold you down and somebody will inject you with pure heroin, or they'll point a gun at your head and tell you to do it. And either way you're forced to ingest it. And so he dies, and kind of life goes on. And we know him as this heavyweight champion, as one of the best fighters in the world. But at the time, he was vilified the whole time. And it makes you wonder if he stepped out of the hyper reality of all the clout chasing that the media was doing, building up this character of completely vilifying him, and just listened to the man that wanted a clean slate where things would change. So I wonder if you take that and you move that elsewhere. So you have an online internet persona who's a monster, but in real life does really kind deeds. But I think what you'll end up finding is that that person will get pushed into a zone to do more bad than good because that's what's expected of them of reality. And no one will give that persona a paid due.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned his name. I was looking up some quotes by him, and he actually says a boxing match is like a cowboy movie. There's got to be good guys and there's got to be bad guys, and that's what people pay for, to see the bad guys get beat. And I find it really interesting that he likens a boxing match to a movie, or like you're saying, a hyper reality. And I do think some people really understand that they're a character and that they have to be separate from the character. You find this a lot in actors that have zany approaches to managing one method versus the other. But you even find this in Nietzsche, where he talks about kind of realizing that
masks, Mr. Ipkiss.
yeah, exactly.
And then you get to Mr. Robot, though, and you get to the line, well, what do you do when a mask stops being a mask? When you can't pull the mask away from your face? Then what? But no, you're right. Like, you find that in actors, you find that in a lot of people. And it's a little bit of a tragic story where you like I said, you have to spend time to get to know people. And honestly do it. Don't try your best to listen to the other human to figure out who they are. If you want to pull the persona of the hyperreal that they're probably stuck in because their job requires it, maybe even their just public life demands it, right? Out looking at celebrities, I highly doubt. I wonder if some celebrities aren't actually who they are, but play that role because they're expected to play it. And then who they are in their private life is completely different. Whether it's good or bad, who cares? It's just completely different.
Oh, yeah. Well, it looks like somebody like Will Ferrell, allegedly. Not as cuddly as he appears on TV and movies. So, and that's okay. Everybody has a role to play in the hyper reality. But I think that, looping back to this concept of authenticity, I think that it's good for the person and individual, and indeed for society, to inject authenticity into the hyper reality as much as possible. It is a patch. It is a sort of slowing of the bleeding, but a necessary slowing nonetheless. And I think that eventually, there will be a marketplace for authenticity, and I think we're starting to see that now with the advent of personalities, long form podcasts, longer conversations, no more of these simulacrum sound bites that we would get from sort of establishment medias. We're craving longer conversation. We're craving more authenticity. And I think we're starting to see a marketplace for that.
May I play devil's advocate?
Sure.
Ayla, go for it. I know you wanted to say something. I don't want you to lose your thought.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I literally had a thought, and then when you started talking, I was like that. Sorry, I'm like off today. Oh man.
No, you're good. So devil's advocate is this. the hyperreal is like a parasite on the authentic. So as you inject authenticity into the world, the hyperreal wants to snuff it out, no matter what. As much as it can, it will attack it to no end, because the hyperreal is, as we've distilled the strawberry example, it becomes far simpler than the strawberry itself, right? Far more deterministic. So the hyperreal will attack the authentic, and to be authentic in the world is to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable, that's a hard thing to ask for, to take those hits. Like going back to boxing, you become like the aged heavyweight who steps into the ring, who's years out of his limelight, but needs a fight to make money. And you know you're going to get knocked out. You know you're going to get beat, but you step in anyways and you do it. And there's a danger being punch drunk as an authentic person, where the hyperreal wears you down. And I even think I'm going to tread lightly. I think even in this form of entertainment and long form conversation, that there have been personalities that are falling victim to the hyperreal attacks over an extended amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a danger in authenticity, but I think the greater danger is the lack of authenticity for the individual. I mean, for society, for sure, definitely, but even just on an individual basis, there is a danger in not trying. And yes, you're going to get beaten down by the hyperreality, but that's okay, because in the end, you were true to yourself. And you didn't sell yourself to the hyperreality.
You're starting to sound like an Aristotelian when it comes to courage.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, I think that we could probably talk in circles about this concept, but we almost hit an hour and a half already. So I think we can wrap up here. Do you guys have anything you wanted to add just towards the end of this?
Just one question. So we're talking about hyperreality, and earlier I was bringing up like digital influencers. So they're not real people. And we talked about automation theory, automata theory last week. Good episode. Good job, Mike. So I'm just thinking to myself, flash forward 50 years, computer technology, algorithms, they all get more sophisticated. I'm not convinced that we're going to be able to generate a true AI until we ourselves understand our own consciousness, which we're not really that close to yet. And so I wonder to myself, when we're able to outsource pretty much everything, right? We can have robots growing meat blobs. We can have robots packing things. We can have robots be influencers and branding things and animation and movies and stuff like that. What will there be left for us to do? And I wondered to myself, if AI, I was going to say, if AI doesn't develop consciousness, then wouldn't we as humans be in the business of consciousness? That our jobs would be to synthesize information and ponder, which is interesting because when you talk about long form podcasts, I got to thinking about like how humans may or may not be evolving right now, because there was a period where we were so maybe like a little more short-sighted, right? Like all this stuff came to a rise in popularity because we liked short, snackable things. If we're starting to evolve into wanting this more authentic, longer, deeper connection and understanding, I kind of wonder if we're starting to have kind of like a consciousness evolution, and that's something that's going to propel us down the road in solving a lot of issues. Is that just me?
I hope
Is that
so.
weird? I mean, that'd be kind of cool, right? Yeah, like
So-
you check in at a job, and your job is to like ponder the intricacies of X and Y, and you think
But you'll
about
have to wear a helmet that the AI can read so it can pick up your brain patterns and thought processes.
Maybe. That data might be a little noisy. It might be like write down your notes and then feed it into the AI. And so as you were talking, Eliv, when you're a kid and you have this hyper real sense of your parents, and you become an adult, and then you realize your parents are just people, just humans. Maybe in the future, adults will build this consciousness as we're, forced to evolve, but the AIs become like our parents. They're like guiding poles to not either act in a certain way or maybe or think in a certain way or not think in a certain way. And we bounce ideas off the AI to build our own consciousness, whether it's right or wrong or rebellious to our parents or in line with our parents. None of that matters. But they are like these tent poles of human consciousness, thus relaxing the labor of our thinking and allow us to specialize more in whatever the essence of the strawberry or the hamburger or the pear or whatever, and they allow us to focus on that one thing.
And maybe we already did, and here we are.
Well, you don't need 7 billion people to ponder, that's for sure. I'll just leave it at that.
You need some people in some factories.
Just some, but not very many. You don't need all that many. Let's just hope that the AI that we create is not a simulacra.
Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying they are. I'm saying that they're going to be a simulacra of whatever we regard as parents. That's the argument I was going.
There we go.
But factories, workers, people. Do you think or hope that? So suppose this hyperreality thing builds into these AIs that help us scaffold ourselves up higher. Do you think that we're going to have from a biological standpoint, I don't even know there's a connection between IQ and biology, but a raise in IQ as a species? Or do you think we'll become dumber because we won't have to worry about stuff?
I really do think that this sort of hyperreality leads to I don't like saying AI because it's such a catch-all term, but it's sort of like machine supremacy. Because I think what hyperreality does is make us a slave to, especially with the advent of social media and more integration of technology and stuff like that. It's making us not a slave, but a kind of like a witness to life unfolding now. And it's presenting us a very particular vision of what life is. It really is, though. But okay, what do you think, Ayla?
I was going to say, I think to get smarter. I think that, the calculator came along and we didn't all buckle under the pressure and stop, all math. No, we just kind of de-emphasized memorization and said, hey, that's getting us from point A to point B. Let's move on to complex algorithms or something like that. And I feel like humans have to evolve to grow smarter over time. And, intelligence can be many things. Doesn't have to just be intellectual. But I do think that humans today are responsible for holding information of all humans in the past through today. And 100 years from now, you're adding 100 years of information. And in 100 years from there, 100 years of information. So the body of knowledge that's going to need to be understood and appreciated, I mean, we might.
But why would it need to be understood?
Well, okay, so I have this theory about how things might play out, and it's a positive theory. One where, we kind of elevate we elevate the bottom of us because we can automate so much. It becomes super easy. The quality of life at that level might not be as great at higher levels, but I do feel like we're going to see this mass uplifting in ease of life. And when you do that, you're creating this ripe field for renaissance to happen. People are going to have more time to pursue things and specialize, and then people are going to have time to synthesize. Because right now, I don't feel like a lot of the disciplines are talking to each other. We have no systems to create freeway systems between, electrochemical studies and, machine learning, or I don't know, Corelli's physicists, logic stuff, and latest research in neuroscience and linguistics. I mean, like, there are these fields that are so specialized and on complete opposites of stuff, and nobody's sitting and being like, wow, if you take field specialization 2873 and field specialization 1690 and you look at them really closely, you might discover something that's really important for field specialization 3010. And of course, I'm using these numbers to illustrate that there's so many different branches of information and research and innovation and need that is happening right now that it's so exciting. And if we can eliminate certain things that have held us back, we have no choice
Why
but
would
to
work hold us back?
So
And that if you're not occupied with your 2 jobs, living check to check, and how to feed yourself and keep a roof over your head, you're going to have time to pick up a book. And that
Or you're
makes
going to
me
have
very
time to
happy.
do a lot of drugs, eat food, and do nothing.
yeah, it becomes a lifestyle choice. But here comes the I've lived both lives. Here comes like the dichotomy. So suppose the academic is rebirthed, right? Because Ayla, you're right, but you're missing the
Academic,
spark.
I said Renaissance.
Yeah, you don't even let me. You don't even let me finish my thought. You just jump in there. Where's the lag now?
It's too much lag. No, I'm having a really hard time.
May I finish my thought?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So you say the Renaissance, and the last I was going to say, you have the rebirth of the academic. The thing that you're missing is the spark, the Renaissance, this Enlightenment period, right? But it comes nowadays, I think, from having free research, free academic, like outside of appealing for grants. If you want to pick up a research job as an independent researcher job, there's no real avenues to do that, right? You could apply for contests, you could apply for a grant, but you can't go into an office and say, hey, I'm an independent researcher, give me a paycheck. And it's like, all right, give me results and we'll give you this paycheck. There's nothing like that exists. But in the future, they may be through alleviation of work. Whereas what Nick's saying with this hedonism sort of thing, where the worker comes in, you still need technicians to fix things, right? Mm-hmm. And that could be sort of our baseline backbone of the factory work. I'm not talking about automating the service sectors. I'm not talking about like robot waiters. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. But there still needs to be a baseline of technicians that can have some sort of hard-coded training to do labor, which is fine. What I worry is that right now we're seeing a huge explosion of the entrepreneurial field through influencers and through people building product lines, which is dope. But when they don't have the engineering skills to do it themselves, you have this ever decreasing pool of engineers and scientists to do the research, which means we have to fund that research somehow. Where you have an explosion in the social sciences, maybe through the automation of labor, you can pull those and make them become independent researchers and have AI sort of guide them upwards. So I can see it where it can go, where we raise IQ great due to the second Enlightenment period, we can call it. But if it's all sort of scaffolded wrong, then I can also see it falling apart very quickly, where honest intellectual curiosity falls into pitfalls of ideology. Because nobody that fell into like SJW stuff should be blamed. They just went into college wanting an education and they got a shit education. That sucks for them. But that still presents they still have the intellectual appetite to learn new things, which means they can still be lifted up and changed, especially through generations. But it's going to take a massive shift in society. So I can see it going both ways. I hope it's for the better, though. I hope this hyperreality can be used as tent poles, right? Like it's not really real. There's like a real in the middle, but you can use it to kind of bounce the conscious mind off of till it gets to a good place. Because I don't care how entrepreneurial you are, if you don't know how to build a website from like ground basic stuff from building the infrastructure up, and somebody starts to say that you're not welcomed on their AWS or their cloud, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's I think that hyperreality drives away actual technical profession because it becomes more about aesthetics, like I think that there are people who probably get into, more technical professions because of the hyperreality perception. But I think I mean, this is just a sort of kind of turn around in the point a little bit, but like I think that hyperreality unfortunately incentivizes less technical specificity.
Yeah, but
I
there's
don't
still
think that
like
it's not impossible, but yeah.
but there's still like to use a bad term, I guess, there's gonna a shift of the autist, like a shift away from like technical work to the aesthetic, because the aesthetic, once you start to get real into it, like if you like Kubrick level art work sort of thing, that is like a OCD or spectrum based endeavor to be that perfectionistic in your craft. And I've met a few artists who have been like that, and all incredible people, but they've all shown me symptoms of the spectrum, which means that there might be a shift from STEM, which a high amount of people in the spectrum are in, to the aesthetic. But it's just you're shifting poles. You're going from one hyperreality to another.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. Sorry, Ayla. I didn't mean to.
No, it's the lag. It's the
I
lag. The lag. The lag will kill us all. No, I was just thinking to your point, Mike. Absolutely, I totally see that. Great points. I think what came to mind when you were talking was like the Google certification plans. So like there are people out there now who don't have to have any computer science background. The framework has been constructed such that we can train people and insert them at critical points to provide resources and information. So that's just one thought that came up in the sense that like, yeah,
Sure,
you do need the specialization. Well, let me just finish my thought, Mike.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm getting all
I forgot the
angsty
second
and
one.
shit.
No, well, I'm just trying to say, I think that there's opportunity to, one, train people for the parts of these specializations that need repetitive, actions or something like that. But beyond that, there is a second thing, but I can't remember it now.
So
what you were going to say.
There's a thing that requires repetitive action. So what is the thing that requires non-repetitive action?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, so, we have STEM kits that we're giving kids 6, 7, 8. More and more, I'm hearing kids that should be in middle school going to college. More and more people are finding that children are able to, like, they can learn much more than we gave them credit for. So I think that just massaging sort of like early learning, appreciating how much a human can learn sooner, because like there's certain things you do not have to wait till college to introduce. And I think if you give people these frameworks super early on as their mind is soaking up information and having to catch up with more information as time forges forward, I just feel like in my bones that we are going to evolve to be able to synthesize more of these far-reaching specialties. Either they're going to be like Zocolos and like public forums where people are given debriefings and then they discuss, because like personally, some of the smartest people I've met aren't specialized in stuff, but then you talk to them about something and they raise a point and you're like, wow, that's an advanced level theorem that I learned, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And it's like, it just came naturally to them.
Yeah, because there's generalization too. You don't have to be a specialist.
Yeah, but front-loading education, it might not be a bad idea, but children do need to play. That's a problem. Or if we can integrate play with learning, that's great, and then teach them the ability to generalize. up into the point of college, then they might be able to take multiple specializations, find a cross discipline that may not exist anymore or doesn't exist yet, to say, which would be great. But the problem with sort of the overuse of vocational stuff is that those people become like factories in their mind, and once you hit a certain age of adult, it becomes very hard to relinquish the ego to learn something new or to admit that you're wrong, even from just a human point, which I completely understand.
That's
But
why
for
we throw them all
example,
off a cliff and we start
like lemmings, just fucking,
Goodness.
just like no, yeah, like Disney chased those lemmings, taking it
Right.
back to Disney, just
Yeah.
chase them off. Yeah,
I love
no, but the problem becomes though, like with GCP, Google Cloud Platform, or AWS, Amazon Web Services. Suppose I was some sort of crazy arch villain and I spent nothing but researching directional weapons or directional energy weapons or whatever to use. Yeah. And so I made a bunch of EMPs and I ran around and I blew up all of the data storage places all around the world. I devoted my whole life to that and I accomplished it. Then those people with those vocations, where it's GCP or AWS, or they learn these 3-letter acronyms that are very specialized, they may not be able to generalize, and then that undercuts the whole thing. That's what we find with the whole learn to code thing, right? That there are vocations that can't generalize to the point of coding, right? And there are two completely different vocations. Like, you don't need to know anything about computer science to know how to code. Nothing at all. I can teach you how to code. It's fine. But if like the generalization is where the magic sort of happens. So if you undercut those vocations, then that sort of repetitive action becomes null and void. The person loses identity and everything goes to hell very fast. That hyper reality that they were aspiring to maybe is lost, right? Because you can argue that we all aspire to a simulacrum in some way or another. Like the American dream is a simulacrum. Achieving any big goal, you're aiming at a simulacrum. You're not aiming at the reality of your true goals. And you find out that your true goals were the friends you made along the way.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, no, I think that you guys are bringing up good points. I think, Ayla, you're right. In the optimist's point of view, I think that the technology, and perhaps even the technology that's created the hyperreality, can help us lift ourselves out of the mire, and hopefully lift people out of, poverty and all of that stuff. I think my biggest reservation and my biggest concern is that what happens to the people who don't fall into the program. Because to me, it's like, okay, so we can create this new world where everybody is lifted and we're all happy and everything is good. But hey, those people over there, yeah, they can't fit into the program.
We have this problem with society too, with low IQ people. We don't know exactly what to do with them.
Right.
Like 40 IQ. Like, I don't even think that's real. But like the lowest realms
60,
of IQ.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what to do with them, and that could be a problem that could be proposed. And the sort of financial solution or the societal solution, I think, would be you let that fall to the state.
And then the state says, throw them off a cliff.
Yeah, no. We have rules in our modern, or in our
rules
postmodern. We don't throw them off the cliff. We use them in the front lines of our war.
There you go.
There's
you go.
utility.
Look what happened to Sparta. Jeez.
Sparta,
Hey,
yeah. They were practicing eugenics.
Sparta gets kind of gnarly. You look into it. Sparta and Athens were completely different worlds, and they had that nice little peace agreement for a long time till you get to those wars. But Sparta was a real interesting place, very matriarchal in reality, which is kind of surprising, because This is kind of weird. Anyways, no, like, but you would fall into that thing where you might be able to start to task your philosophers, right? The thinkers, to go, all right, if you're so wise, if you know so much information, then how do how do these people at this part of society, how can they work? In our society, you find the same issue with serial killers. Intelligent people, some of them, really highly intelligent, but we don't know what to do with them, so we throw them away in cages instead of trying to figure out some use
Right.
for them.
We kill.
Dexter's quite
our-
a good show. The new one.
I think that the problem is that our technology is making us think we're more evolved than we are. Our technology is evolving. We are not. So, like the go-to is always just kill them. It's always that.
Yeah.
It's always that. It doesn't
But
ever
we have to
change.
we have to find out some solution. And if we have people who are literally paid to think about specialization 1647 and special, was it 2K TK? I'm trying to think of the stormtrooper number. What's stormtrooper? Or THX 1138, and you have specialization 1138 or whatever. You have all these specializations out there. We can task some people to think like, all right, what should we do with these people that aid our society? And then we could at least start to build a solution from there, assuming that we have all of the technology and the infrastructure to do that.
Would you
And the answer is not throw them off a cliff.
No, I was gonna say, would you say that they might come to a final solution? I mean, come on, you guys.
This is a working solution.
Right, where everybody lives and we all have rainbows and lollipops. Yes. No, I think the optimistic point of view is a good one, just because like that's the way we have to kind of think about this stuff. Like we can't get too pessimistic about it. And though I do have my concerns about how hyperreality could lead us to a point where if we decide to structure society within this hyper-realistic world, we might, the people might fall by the wayside. That might just be an inevitability anyways, but I do think that it is more optimistic to hope that we structure a society in which we don't leave people behind. So,
yeah,
I think that that's a good message for the future people out there listening. So please don't leave anybody behind. Yeah.
Screw it. Let them become an artist.
Yeah, just let them become an artist. Yeah, there you go. Right. Okay. Well, I think I did say that we were going to wrap up about 40 minutes ago. So we should wrap up now. I think if you guys are good with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. We very much appreciate you. Thank you for taking your time to listen to this conversation. We hope that you enjoyed it. I certainly did. I think that it was a great casual conversation about the concept of hyperreality. If you feel so inclined, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a subscription to our YouTube page. We are also on Verbal for your audio needs at Exofathom. We're also on Rumble and Odyssey at Exofathom, and obviously YouTube and Facebook at Exofathom. So please be sure to check us out every Monday night at 8 p.m. And until next time, Cognonauts, you stay out there, and we'll catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.